Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And today is day 18 of our 100 days of DevOps, and we've been looking at Git and GitHub. Today is going to be our last day considering Git and GitHub, and it's really going to be a very short session. So if you're coming across this channel for the first time, we're trying to cover DevOps, everything about DevOps in 100 days, trying to understand concepts and also practicalizing it and seeing how things work in the real world environment. We started this first phase with the fundamentals. We talked about Linux, we talked about networking, then we talked about version control, which we considered Git, and then GitHub. So today we are going to round up on GitHub, and I just really want to touch on something really simple but very, very important, and it just has to do with structuring your GitHub repository. So most time in a production environment, you're not going to be working alone. You're going to be working in a team. It could be a team of 5 persons. It could be a team of 20 persons. So, and it is very, very paramount and important that your repository is properly structured, because it helps with consistency, clarity, scalability, automation, and all of that. So it's good to have a very, very good structure for your GitHub repository. So what I have here is the key principles of structuring a DevOps repo. So it has to be, like I said, consistent. So you have to use the same structure across all your repos, so it is predictable and easy to follow. So most times we don't want to complicate things, because like I said, you're not going to be working on a project all by yourself. So it's better for you to do some things or do things that would make it easy for another person to be able to understand what you are doing and follow suit. So yes, another point you need to consider is clarity. So you name your files in a proper way. I'm pretty sure that each organizations have like a naming convention of how they name their files. So basically, if they don't have it, then you by yourself, you take it upon yourself to make sure that the names you give to your repositories, your files, your documents are actually simple and easy to follow. Yes. So another thing you need to consider is scalability. So your repo should be able to grow as projects evolve. So always make room for growth in your repo. What I mean by grow is in the sense that you structure it in a way that scaling up that application does not affect the whole repository. And you can do that by creating things like modules, shared library, and all of that. So your repo should be able to accommodate organic growth without, breaking, without having any issues. So another thing you need to consider is automation. If you're doing as a DevOps engineer, you're going to be working with CI/CD a whole lot, as well as other forms of automation. So you ensure that files needed for CI/CD and automations are easy to find and use. So we don't have to struggle, because automation is automation is the core foundation of DevOps. Then CI/CD is at the epicenter of automation. So these are files that you should not be scrambling or searching around for. They are files that should be easily seen. And then one last and very, very, very important thing, not just in DevOps, but in tech as a whole, is documentation. This particular one cannot be overemphasized. The need for documentation cannot be overemphasized, because it really helps. So, and in your GitHub repository, there's always a file called a README file. So a README file acts as a map to your project. It details everything, or it gives an overview about the project for anyone that comes as interacting with your repository for the first time. So README file, your documentation is actually non-negotiable. It's one of the most important things that should be in your repository. So we're going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at one repository. I just want to show you one or two things. So now the core repo structure for DevOps project, basically we have two: the root directory, which is the top level, and the project directory. The root directory, basically they are the ones that you see once you come across a repository. These are things that you see like firstly before other things. So basically the root directory should comprised of a README, very, very important and crucial. License information for how others can use your project. So it's also very, very important. Then gitignore is also very important also. So this basically gitignore, I explained on the first day. The gitignore is a file where you put other files that you don't want to commit. For example, your environmental files, your API tokens, your username, your database username, your password, and all of that. So you put them in a file called in .gitignore. So what happens is that whenever Git wants to commit, Git does not commit those your files in your gitignore. And besides, your gitignore, yes, you can commit the gitignore file. You understand? You can commit the gitignore file. Some companies or some persons allow you to commit the gitignore file. Basically, just to show you, if you are doing like a project or like a demo, they can commit the file just to show you the things that should be in the gitignore. But the main files specified in the gitignore should not be committed. I will show you an example in a minute. So if you're using Docker, your Docker file, your Docker Compose file can be at the root level. So in the project level, that's where you have like your applications. Let's say, for example, your code can be in directories, like folders in folders. You understand? So infrastructure can also be like a folder where you have other, files or other folder. That's for your Terraform, for your Ansible, CloudFormation, and all the rest. So for CI/CD also, CI/CD is always a folder that has like subfolders. You understand? So same thing with your scripts, where you put your your deployment script, your backup script, your shell script, your bash script, any form of script. Then any documentation, like you could be your architectural diagram or images, any documentation whatsoever. So there should be a folder for it. Then for unit tests, if you are doing testing your application and all of that, you should have a folder for it. So all these ones, these particular ones, these four, they are not folders. They are just files that should be in your root level. So while all these other ones, they are folders that contain other folders, like other subfolders. So basically, this is just like it's not a one-fit-all situation. You understand? It varies from time to time, but I'm just trying to cover the most common ones. So basically, this is how the core repo structure for DevOps project can look like. So it's now left for you to tweak it according to your discretion or according to the requirement of the project. So lastly, I talked about before now I talked about the need for documentation, and that is where the README file comes into play. I really just want to touch a bit on it. What is actually expected of your README? So basically, your README is the detail of what your project is all about. This is what tells somebody everything about your project, the architecture, how to use it, your stack, and basically contains everything about your project. This is like an overview, so that once anybody comes to your repository and they go through the README file, they can clearly understand what exactly your project is about. When recruiters check your repository, when anybody wants to check your repository, they are able to properly see what your project is all about, or whatever project you are working on, what it is about. So basically, it's written in can see .md. .md means markdown. So markdown is like a language that it's another type of language. I don't really know how to explain it, but probably tomorrow I can quickly show that. So what should be in your README file? Your project overview should be in your README file. If there are any forms of installation, if you're installing any thing, if you're doing any package, if you're doing any stuff, so you should have your installation guide, and how to use also your usage instruction, how to run, if it's a Java application, how to run it. If it's a Python or a Node.js, basically it should contain how to run those things. Then if you are working with CI/CD, you should have your CI/CD information, any setup, how the app gets built and deployed and all of that. Then contribution guidelines. Obviously, if you're working as a team, then you want others to help and all of that. So basically, like I said, your README is your overview of exactly what you are doing. It's what properly details what you want to achieve to anyone who comes across with your repository. So that's basically what I just wanted to touch today. Let me show you an example of a repository here. So I'm in Kubernetes repository, and this is called the root level. The root level is the first thing that you see. So you can see, first off, you can see .gitignore. So if we open this, you will see all these files. All these files are put in .gitignore. So anything you put in .gitignore does not get committed. So what this means is that all these files are actually on the developer's local PC. It's on the developer's laptop, but it is not on the remote repository, because these are files that cannot be shared to the general public. So basically, that's what you put in your .gitignore. Files that cannot be shared to the general public are put in .gitignore. So you can see the license file. Then you can see the README. Most times, what you have in your README is what is actually showing here. So it's your README that's usually displayed. You can see it here, your README. So everything about this project is properly detailed here. You can see to start using KTest, to start developing KTest, you can see commands, git clone and everything, support community meetings and all of that. So basically, it gives you a very detailed overview of what this particular repository is all about and the things that they're hoping to achieve with this repository. So you can see some other ones. You can see the test file you can use for testing and all of that. So you can see all the other stuffs which have files inside of it. So basically, this is how you structure your GitHub repository. I just felt I needed to touch on that so that I'll just have that out of the way. So we've come to the end of the Git session on GitHub. So what we'll do is that as we progress, as we work on different tools, we'll learn how to structure those tools. Like when we start doing containerization, we'll see how to structure our repository and everything. When we go to container orchestration, if you're doing infrastructure as code, Ansible, and all of that, Kubernetes, Helm, and other ones, we'll learn how to properly structure each part or each component of our DevOps workflow. So I'm going to see you again tomorrow. We're going to talk about YAML from tomorrow, and we'll see how that takes us. So enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.